I'd like to now move on to James, and we'll have some Q&A afterwards that both of them can be part of a broader discussion. So James, being with ReGen Villages, tell us a little bit about what ReGen Villages is all about, and then also answer that question really about how we're going from surviving to thriving and making a big difference as part of this particular theme of addressing growth through resilience.
Well,
James.
thank you so much for inviting me here and ReGen Villages and our initiative. It's a great honor, of course, to be with Mayor Matheson and Stratford. What an incredible story. It sounds like a beautiful place. I can't wait to not only visit, but hopefully be able to realize ReGen Villages community there. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see what's happening here. I guess you can see my screen now. So just want to go through some slides here pretty quickly, and then I'm happy to answer questions. But ReGen Villages is a Stanford University spinoff company that I founded after almost 18 years of case study research of organic, biodynamic family farms and intentional communities and eco-villages. And also my background in software and technology. But really, you know, we've been predicting, I have to say, for nearly almost a decade here at Stanford, and before that, that cities are brittle, and at some point that there would be some kind of anomaly that would create an exodus. And of course, COVID now has brought that home. Before I get into the above ground concept of ReGen Villages, which is these technology-enabled, bio-regenerative, and resilient neighborhood developments, I'd like to really talk about the inspiration, which is under the ground, and this idea of these mycelial, mycorrhizal networks, these fungal networks that connect plants and trees and shrubs with basically an internet under the forest floor, electrochemically signaling have-need network, which is so incredible because it's a metaphor, we hope, for the future of economics and living. Now imagine a digital mycelial network. That is the basis of our Village OS software that can not only design these self-sustaining communities around food, water, energy, waste to resource management, connectivity to energy positive homes, and all those kinds of wonderful things, smart mobility, et cetera, but also that the software will then be the operational tool to run the physical infrastructure of those neighborhoods. The heart and soul of our communities is the open space that's very much informed by First Nations, indigenous wisdom. Very important that we start with that concept, that it's not just what's happening beneath the soil, but that the wisdom and the heritage is also embraced. And this concept of biodiverse nutrition, soil-based farming, non-till soil that's biodynamic and really biodiverse, but also that we can marry that, especially with some of these amazing technologies we've just seen coming from Canada, that we can marry those controlled environment farming technologies with aquaponics, aeroponics, lots of different kinds of really delicious menu items at your doorstep. And really exciting to be able to blend all those things together for the key word of safety and resiliency. We see what's happening in the world right now. We need to be able to have these resources more and more at our doorstep. That actually promotes healthy living. So to get a little bit into the tech, we are the first of its kind, essentially software that can look at previously siloed neighborhood infrastructure and integrate that in a way that these systems can not only understand each other, but learn from each other and then autonomously improve. That is our goal with machine learning, that we can connect these previously siloed systems for the benefit of these communities. And as I mentioned before, that the software can design these fully regenerative neighborhoods and then operate those neighborhoods, kind of the local farmhouse server, if you will. And that really brings this whole idea forward of living within nature and not separate from it as a function of technology. But moreover, imagine these neighborhoods being able to communicate with other neighborhoods in similar climate zones around the world and learn from each other and improve or mitigate against risk. This is kind of why the reason we've been called the Tesla of eco-villages, because this concept of the sentient neighborhood that is there for the flourishing of its inhabitants, and also for the benefit, of course, of social affordable housing. It's a very pivotal point for us. Accessibility for communities to live and come together around the most disarming topics, which are food and natural resources, again, at your doorstep. But I love this slide the most because it's about multicultural, ethnic, race, socioeconomic level neighbors coming together around food and recipes and storytelling and the aromas and the flavors, but that you age in place. This concept of senior living or assisted living is anathema to First Nations embracing of tribal elders and that wisdom, so important that we need to get back to. But just briefly, we have reached a nerve all around the world. We have outreach across a global framework of locations. And just to say that we are a company that is multinational. ReGen Villages is also in British Columbia now as our first foray into Canada. We're also in the Netherlands and Sweden, here in the US, in the UK. We have become the Rolling Stones of the modern eco-village movement. Plenty of press coverage that continues to feature what we're up to. Briefly, we're connected to all these different incredible technology companies and looking forward to more Canadian technology companies that we can embrace and embed into our Village OS software. Also, because I maintain my affiliation at Stanford and Singularity University, that we connect to all the great universities around the world to bring this really important knowledge forward. Most importantly, we need to change the rules. So at the end of the day, what ReGen Villages is about is to change the rules in all of these areas. Just to mention, we're part of the UN Climate Change Secretariat. We're part of the EU Smart Rural Village Commission, most recently part of the EU Bauhaus Roundtable. A great team of folks, including we've got Jean-Marc Laflamme, who's here on the call today, happy to also to take questions. So we're building our team as well, of course, in Canada. And very simply, our call to action. We are interested in land opportunities because we have substantial funding sources that are interested in our pipeline, our global pipeline of building these kinds of modern eco-village communities, 500 unit home communities on at least 60 plus acres, and simply put, to look for those kinds of government and community engagement that are ambitious to change the rules for fast track planning. That's what we have to be able to do rapidly right now. And so I want to thank everybody again for this wonderful opportunity. And I'm really looking forward to bringing ReGen Villages forward in Canada, in the US, around the world as a leading example of meeting green transition funding, finance, and sustainable development goal commitments. So thanks very much.
Well, thanks, James, and thanks, Dan, also. Both of you are still here for some questions. One question that has come in is a question around change. It's one of the most difficult things for a community to embrace is change, and both of you are living that and promoting your communities around change. However, with this pandemic, communities had to deal with change as a new reality. They've had to deal with it, sometimes accelerating it as much as 10 times. People who are living it today might have thought that those sorts of changes would come 10 years from now, but they're happening right now, and they're going to live with it and maybe continue to live with it moving forward. So how do you explain to your constituents and to your communities in ReGen the importance of leveraging that technology to grow your communities successfully? Dan, we'll start with you first and then followed by James.
Well, I think, John, for many people, there was the fear of the unknown and the fear of that I can't do this alone. So I think for us, it was breaking it down into, there's going to be someone here to support you through this. There will be people to walk you through this. You will not be alone, and you are not the only person experiencing this. And so having some type of forum or collaboration opportunity for people to, be vulnerable and ask those questions and to work collaboratively with others, I think was the key. It still doesn't mitigate all the fears that are going to exist and all the worries, because some people say, look, I don't want to not have my great shop downtown. I don't not want to have my restaurant full with people when we can get back to it. I understand this is a new avenue of revenue, or a new avenue of delivering service and product, but I want to make sure that I don't take away from what I built as a brand. And then it was having people work with them to understand how that brand can actually transcend to the packaging that they put their product in and how it goes out from there. And that was really the key around it. So it required us to just be very communicative, collaborative, and of course to be vulnerable with them.
You get much pushback?
Yeah, you know what? Early on we did, John, but I think what happened was we had some good wins early, and we had some people that were happy to evangelize for us and talk about it, and people saw the success. And then, like anything, people want to be part of a successful opportunity. When we first offered the digital programming for restaurants and retail, we had only a small amount of money because we were doing it ourselves. But then the province of Ontario made the much larger grants available and wider, and then it was everybody wanted to be part of it then. So it went from kind of I don't know about that, to, oh my gosh, I want in on that now. And thankfully the province realized across the whole region in the province that there was an opportunity for them to make a difference with retail and restaurants.
So James, do you see any pushback in terms of the communities you go to? One might say, the communities that are closer to the earth, they might get involved, or you talk about aging in place. What about the rest of the community, the average citizen? Do they push back on your thoughts at all? What do you think?
No, not at all. I mean, we, for the most part, we really look at technology as a means to an end. And the idea really is, just as Elon Musk has done very successfully with Tesla, as Steve Jobs has done with the iPhone and other amazing technologies from Apple and others, that when you create something that is your something you rely on and you feel comfortable with, it becomes a means to an end. And so I love Amish tech. I mean, I love First Nations tech. I love this idea that when things break and go wrong, you're okay. You are able to get through your day, your week, your month, your year. You have what you need. And that's really where we feel technology is the most important pivot point. And I also want to talk just for a second about the fact that there's this connectivity now with an industrialized approach to circular building material and prefab assembly line housing infrastructure. And they need a pipeline of place. We have to change these 150-year-old rules, right? In terms of planning and zoning and being able to say, okay, you're going to build the right kind of place that's in balance with nature. Here are these Canadian companies doing this wonderful work. Let's bridge all those pieces together, connect them, and build these communities quickly for the benefit of urgent housing crisis, but also that take into consideration open space. So it's this whole idea of blending the natural world with technology. And at that point in time, it just becomes a demand. You have to fulfill that demand.
Great. And that's a good segue to my other question that's come in. The Biden administration is promoting growth through environmental resiliency. In Canada, we've been promoting economic and societal growth for decades at conferences like Globe in Vancouver. Are we now at the tipping point where we will be seeing true economic growth through new jobs reflecting environmental sustainability and resiliency? And are you seeing it now? James, start with you.
Absolutely. I mean, look, there was an Oxford study that came out a couple of years ago that said, in 20 years, that 47% of all employment won't exist anymore. And that was a pre-COVID research analysis using machine learning, artificial intelligence, robotics, automation, et cetera. That's a pretty scary figure if you live in this context of jobs as the metric, right? But if we can start to think differently about self-worth, about creativity, about engagement in community and all those different kinds of things, then we are kind of shifting towards a new economic model that is inclusive and allows those things to move forward. At the same time, there are new jobs that are coming in reference to what I mentioned before about prefab, construction, and being able to live and work in these kinds of communities where not only do you have a living wage, but you're living in an energy positive house where your basic Maslow hierarchical needs, food, water, energy, waste to resource management, that the neighborhood itself has your back. It's nurturing you. We think that's a really exciting way to then move forward with new kinds of employment opportunities.
And Dan, in Stratford and Southwestern Ontario, are you seeing this kind of interest developing as people are beginning to recognize that there are new business models and opportunities moving forward?
Definitely, John. We're seeing that there is definitely opportunities coming from us from an environmental and a sustainability front. We've also been recently caught in it ourselves as a community. You know, we had the opportunity for a large manufacturing facility that would use a lot of greenhouse or natural gas, which would produce greenhouse gases. And, you know, I will say that I was on probably the wrong side of an issue with it, because a lot of people came out and said, don't look at it on jobs. Don't look at it only on economic output. Don't look at it on taxation. Please take into consideration environmental and sustainability. And I think, you know, rightly, members of council sat and heard those arguments from very thoughtful individuals. And it's interesting. It's not just young people. It's not just older people. It is a cross section now in communities of people from different walks of life that are coming forward and saying, look, the model of community economic development, the definition of what makes a community successful can no longer just be jobs and taxation and revenue generation. It needs to look at environmental stewardship, environmental sustainability, and what kind of jobs are we creating and products that come from it. And, you know, and as I said, you know, I myself, wrong side of that issue, and learn very quickly, you know, and that's an important lesson for us all to learn, that the attitudes around it are changing quickly.
And of course, when you have a community like yours and the ones that James is promoting, it also attracts investment from the outside and people who want to be part of a community like yours. Are you seeing some kind of interest as a result of that?
I believe we are seeing a lot of interest in that. You know, today we're setting a council. As soon as I leave this, we're talking about what our greenhouse gas targets are going to be by 2030. I can tell you that our early thoughts on it are completely disconnected from what a number of our community members want to see us achieve. There is a thirst and an appetite for people to be engaged around it, and it's they're willing to make the same sacrifices in their own life, and they'd like to see the city's policies follow the same type of thinking, and to be bold with how they go about doing it, and to be aggressive. And as they said, if you don't shoot for the moon, you'll never get there. And if you fall just short, that's okay. But don't don't shoot for something that's easily unattainable. And I think that's one thing for all of us to keep in mind, is that, you know, we've got to keep reaching beyond our capabilities and capacity, because that's the only way we're going to get to that new tipping point.
Thanks, Dan. James, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, ReGenVillages.com. It's I think Jean-Marc also posted in the chat. I also want to just say that great to hear Dan, you know, acknowledge his growth through this process and coming forward. It's real leadership, I just want to say, and really honored to see that happen. We're also working right now on what's called a positive externality spreadsheet with Duke University. So ReGen Villages and Stanford and other universities at this moment, to be able to show what these communities not only will do for the people who live in them, but this surrounding public goodwill radius that happens when you build flourishing, blossoming and fruiting communities that are healthy, that reduce burdens on government, local, regional, national, reduce burdens on healthcare systems. These are all really pivotal kinds of things that that allow us to then put resources to other things. So again, I'm really grateful to be part of this conversation and looking forward to all the different communities and members here who are participating to look at how we can bring ReGen villages with now this institutional funding support as our kind of tailwind to bring these forward, at scale for the benefit of Canada.
Great. Well, thanks, Dan, and thanks, James.